Welcome to the Underwater Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of underwater portrait photography, cinematography, and everything in between, with your host, Brett Stanley. Welcome back to the Underwater Podcast, and this week I'm chatting with surf and underwater photographer Eric Renard. Eric, along with his brother Ian, created an underwater housing for a 4x5 large format Polaroid camera 20 years ago and shot some incredible photographs with it in Tahiti. We talk about how they built the camera and housing, the technical issues they had to overcome, and what it's like to shoot one frame an hour for 3 weeks. Alright, let's dive in. Eric, welcome to the Underwater Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I've got to tell you that I've seen your underwater Polaroids for years now, and even friends of mine have talked about these images, and we never really knew who created them or who made this underwater Polaroid case. So I've kind of been tracking you down for the last few years, so I'm glad to finally actually have you on the show.
Well, great to be here. It's funny, I saw there was some talk online and some people were trying to do stuff with 4x5 underwater. And my name popped up in the chat, which was kind of good because they were talking about there was a guy who was shooting in the rivers somewhere. You know where they got the manatees?
Oh, in the Florida Springs.
Yeah, in somewhere around there. And there was one guy who had a model and they were kind of, sometimes the banter is not that positive and some people was criticizing it and the purist was complaining that some of the stuff is not that sharp. But I think that photography these days, something can be blurry and brings you emotion.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what it's all about. I always say to people, as long as there's something, you see something and it gives you some emotion, then, get it to put on your wall if you want it,
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's triggering something inside of you.
No, exactly. I think I've always kind of said this is if out of focus and blurry photos are your style, then go for it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And
I saw this exhibition in Paris. Remember when there was a bit of a transition between film and digital? Yeah. And there was this photographer that went and did exhibition with throwaway cameras. So it was a little bit of the trend at that time. There was all these little throwaway cameras. You know the one that I'm talking about, right?
The little Kodak disposable cameras.
Yeah. So he did an exhibition. I saw that in Paris. Most of them was soft focus, but the content or what was in there was amazing. He sold out.
Yeah.
And it's a time that really made me think about lots of different things. And then you had the digital that came through. And although I love film and I love holding film, etc., I think the creation of digital has helped a lot of kids who was not good at, getting the exposure right, create something. And it has really shaken the world of photography and have a lot of new ideas coming through.
Oh, no, absolutely.
So I think that was the best thing about digital. For me, I still can't get around in my head of all my photos stored in a box.
Right.
As a hard drive. And I'd rather go through a file and seeing my negative, but that's being a little bit maybe old style.
Yeah.
But I mean, the funny thing is I still scan them and have them in that box, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you have to, right? Just for the ease of use and everything.
Well, to be able to promote yourself, everything is online these days. Everything's digital. So you need to transfer your photography to digital. But
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talk about the transition from film to digital, because that's probably similar to what happened when Polaroid came out, which was this instant photograph.
For us, it was how we fell into that medium. I was using a good printer in Sydney, and I was at the lab, and he had the PN55. I don't know if you know that film or if your audience know that film. So PN55 is a 4x5 Polaroid, rated at 50 ASA. So it was probably one of the sharpest film out there at the time. And it's got a really cool border around it. And there was a little portrait, photo about a 5x7 or something. And it was on his wall, shot by a photographer. And I went, oh, wow, what's this? What type of film that was? And he said, oh, it's a Polaroid 4.5. And the Polaroid 4.5 comes with a negative and a positive. And you got to overexpose the positive, which is the paper that we all get as a Polaroid.
Right.
But it also had a negative to it. And so the negative needed to be exposed at 40 ASA. So it's a bit of a slow film. And I thought, cool, maybe we should start doing some portrait with it. And I went and bought a 4x5 camera and just started experimenting with the film.
Yeah. And so with that camera you went and bought, is that just any camera, and then the Polaroid back goes on the back of it?
Yeah, that's a Linhof Master Technica.
Right. Yeah.
And so normal 4.5 camera.
Does that have bellows as well?
Yeah.
Right.
Most of them got bellows, I think. Do you know any 4.5 that doesn't have bellows?
I think I'd seen some pictures of the camera underwater, and I think I didn't see any camera with the bellows.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say ingenuity, but we broke our head for a year to try to figure out how we were going to make it work underwater.
Yeah. So let's scoot back a little bit. So how did you come up with the idea to start shooting Polaroid underwater?
Well, so we started experimenting with this. And so I used to be, a while back just before I started photography, I used to be a diving instructor. An assistant diving instructor. And every now and then I popped in the diving shop where, I got my course and all that.
Yeah.
And one of the instructors said to me, oh, Eric, you should go to this place. It's near Tonga and the visibility is like 60 meters. And which is times 3, so about 180 feet. And the whales come really close to you. There's massive whales. You can swim quite close to the whales. And I went, oh, wow. I'm not really a nature photographer. I don't go out and shoot wildlife. I've always been a people person shooter. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love scenery. I take some photos of scenery, but I don't go out, set off to go, I'm going to go out to Alaska and take some scenery shots. So I went, okay, that could be cool, but not really my thing. Yeah. But I went back and talked to Ian. So for everybody who doesn't know, I got a twin brother and we both work together. We're both photographers. So I talked to him about it and I said, well, it'd be cool to probably have somebody in there. And we thought, well, why don't we have a naked girl? Hasn't been done before. And, big animal, why don't we shoot it with a 4.5? And we went, all right, yeah, no problem. I think we were a little bit naive of what we were saying.
Right.
And when we started developing the idea, we realized that it wasn't going to be that easy. But it was, for me, something that's not easy is a bit challenging. So it's like,
makes you want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So we went on. It took us about a year to try to figure out how to get a camera to work underwater. And so with the help of an engineer from a camera shop, we tried different things, and we ended up realizing that the only way it would work, I'm not sure your audience are very much a lot of underwater people, right?
In general, yeah, just underwater.
So most people will shoot underwater with a dome port, and some of them will have a flat port. Dome port will go probably with a wide angle, and then a flatter port with a lens.
Yeah.
But the problem, whether it's a dome port or a flat port, is that the distance between your lens and the front of the port, when that varies, that creates a magnifying effect.
Yeah.
All right. So as a diving photographer, there would be no problem. You have a autofocus camera, so you just go out and you'll autofocus. But if your focus needs to be fixed, then you need to know exactly where to put the focus.
Yeah.
And so we set out realizing that we couldn't deal with a dome port. It had to be a flat port. And then we realized that the lens could not be moved.
Right.
And then we thought, well, how do we focus?
Because with the bellows, you move the bellows back and forth, which moves the front of the lens, basically, right?
But then we realized that the cool thing, what is focus, really? Focus is moving where the image, the plane where it's focused, to where the film is, basically. So that plane could be behind the film or in front of the film.
Yeah.
You're just moving it to that where your film is.
Right.
So we decided and the great thing with the 4.5 is that you can move the back instead of the front.
Oh, yeah, right. So you fix the front of the bellows and move the camera back.
We took the bellows out.
Right.
We made that fixed, and we just used the back bellows to focus.
Oh, okay.
So then we had a lens that we made it came to as close as possible to the flat port, and we just moved the bellows at the back to vary our distance.
Oh, right.
Okay. So that was one hurdle over. And then we knew that to try to go underwater and focus would be just too hard. So we had to pre-focus things.
Right. Yeah.
And the way we made sure that everything was focused is that we did some tests before, making sure, let's say that at 3 meters, I was able to get some type of images underwater. And then what was happening is that I was, basically the model was going out with a measuring tape that I had a measuring tape with me on my weight belt.
Yeah.
And then so she would take that out to 3 meters, and then I would reel it back in.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then I would try to keep that distance constant when we were going down together.
Right.
And
so what sort of aperture are you at?
Only 5.6.
Right. But even in a medium format, that's quite not a lot of...
That's like f4 or even less.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So not a lot of room for error.
No, not a lot of room. Yeah. And it had to be that because we lost the stop going underwater. We were only shooting at a very shallow depth. So it was between 5 and 1 meter,
Right.
of the surface.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but we were still, I still overexposed to have a little bit of, it's always a little bit overexposure in black and white. It's kind of good. You can get that back instead of having the opposite if it's too dark. And then the film was at 40 ASA. And then I was shooting about 60th of a second underwater.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So fairly slow.
Yeah.
So I mean, what was the reason behind not going with the dome port? Would that just make things more complicated?
Yeah. The dome port will, because it's not flat, your lens will not be flat against the window or the port itself. Then, it's got a reversal effect, the dome port, because if you you shot with the dome port before on a fix, on manual focus.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So how you probably need to put it at very close. But then when you, for us, I think the dome port created more problems, that we didn't want to go, okay, if we have a dome port, first it would have been very expensive to find a dome port that would have the angle of, it was a 90 mil lens that we were using, but still it's seeing quite a bit. Right. So it's a bigger lens, etc. So to find whoever would be making, and I don't think it was impossible, but it would have created a lot more problems.
Yeah. So just by using the flat port, you kind of reduce the amount of problems you had.
Yeah.
With this.
I mean, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting these days to go, okay, why don't we try a dome port to this? And see what difference, to test it with one flat port and one dome port.
Yeah. Well, I think the main difference would be because if you're on a 90 mil lens to start with, then you're basically going to magnify that by 20% with the flat port. Mm-hmm. So with the dome port, you're going to get that 90 back again. So you get a wider frame. But I mean, that's interesting. So you went for the flat port, and then so how did you build the housing itself?
So the Polaroid back, so with the PN55, you slide the sheet film in, and then once it was in, the bottom, there's a metal bottom there, and it kind of locked inside the holder. And then you had to pull, it was like a curtain, a little bit like just a normal sheet holder, but the curtain is made out of paper.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So, and inside the curtain on the top, you got the chemicals.
Yeah.
Plus you got the negative. I think.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. No, I think the negative is in, and you have the positive inside.
Right.
Okay. I kind
is PN is this film, is it similar to like other Polaroid film where it is basically all sandwiched together with the chemicals inside it?
Yeah, it's like that, but PN got a negative and a positive.
Gotcha. Okay, so you would end up pulling it apart. One side would be negative and one side would be positive?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So the good thing, you wash the negative in sodium sulfide.
Right.
Okay. And you clear the chemicals from it, and then you hang it up to dry.
Oh, okay.
And you got a pretty sharp 4x5 negative.
Right. Yeah.
From your Polaroid. But the sad thing is that you got to overexpose the positive to got a properly exposed negative. So you kind of lose having a Polaroid.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you can't expose it perfectly for both of them. You've got to ruin one for the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you'd be aiming for the negative, obviously, so you can
yes,
print from it.
And I think people use a PN because of the cool border and the negative effect also.
Yeah.
So with the positive, you didn't get that border.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, it was just like a normal Polaroid positive. It's just a negative that had that border.
Right.
It was basically a way to attach the system together. And then it ended up going, hey, wow, everybody went, fuck, I love the border.
Right, yeah. It's interesting how people pick up on different things and kind of run with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think when they made it, it was intentionally that the border would be the cool thing.
Right. Yeah.
I think people, photographers picked it up and go, yeah, great concept, but I love the border.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So that how did that kind of cause you design issues in terms of having to get that Polaroid out of there?
Yeah. So we asked so we went to a guy that made housing, custom made housing, and we asked him to make sure that the housing was wide on the right-hand side. So when you kept that carton or paper that you would pull out, you'll keep it straight on the side.
Right.
Unfortunately, he didn't follow the instruction that well and made it shorter.
Oh, no.
So we were just able to curl it around without really bending it.
Right.
Which was very lucky. Otherwise, he would have had to break it and make an extension. So we ran with it like that.
Yeah. Right. And so when you look at the back of the camera, is it twice the size of the Polaroid sheet because you have a container for the film on the side?
Yeah, no, just it was. So, I mean, normally this guy makes his housing a little bit bigger. It's a little bit low. There's a bit more air around the camera. It's not a really tightly fit housing to cameras that he normally makes.
Yeah.
And this one had to have some levers, etc. So we would put the camera in and then pull the lever to release the camera from the bracket, and then also have some space for the Polaroid on the side, plus have a manual system to release the trigger, to press the trigger.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit wider. It wasn't double the size of the camera, but I'd say it was 1.5 kind of.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Off to one side. Yeah. But so then he's made this thing bigger, which now has more air inside it.
Yeah.
That would have
15 kilos, which is...
right.
Yeah. How many pounds is that?
Oh, it's like 35 pounds or something. Yeah. So how would you attach that? Would you just wrap a weight belt around it or something?
Yeah. So, I mean, we could have made an anchor point, and we actually did put a system around it to put the weights attached to it. But the big problem was then lifting it out of the water to pass the camera to Ian. So we thought it's better if we have just a weight belt. And so there was a hook by the side of the Zodiac where I'll take the weight belt out and put it on the hook and then pass the housing to Ian.
Right.
Who was in the boat to process each shot.
And did that 15 kilos, did that sort of make it pretty neutrally buoyant under the water?
It made it a little bit negatively buoyant. So I could leave the camera on the floor bed.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't want it to be too, I mean, the problem it would have been hard, right? Depending what depth you're going. And then I didn't want at some stage, if I had to let it go, that it'll just float up to the surface. Oops.
Right. Yeah. And so what sort of depth were you in? I think you said like 1
So
to 5
Tahiti
meters.
was standing depth.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a sandbank where the stingrays get fed.
Right.
So the best thing with that is that she was, after each shot, she could stand and really relax and take a breath.
Right.
Otherwise, she would have been kicking and get more tired, so it would have been a little bit harder.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long did it take you to do each shot? I assume you could only do one photo at a time.
So I would go down with her. So first, to be able for her to stay down, she had to exhale some of the air inside. She can't just go and take a deep breath because she'll just float back up.
Yeah.
So she had to exhale some of the air in her lungs. And so she could only stay about 15 seconds. So she'll go down, get the position, and sometimes the stingray wasn't there. And then, or sometimes the position was not right. And when she came back, I wasn't wearing any scuba. So I needed to, because first I could last a lot longer than her because I could hold my breath a deeper hold than her. Yeah. And then I needed to converse with her to give her feedback, So as soon as she came back up, I'll come back up and then talk to her. And then when she's okay, we'll just go back down and do that until her position was right. And then there was a stingray there. And then if that came together nicely, I'll take a photo. Then I'll swim back to the boat, take the weight belt, pass that to Ian. Ian would open the housing, take the camera out, put the carton back in, process the Polaroid, wait for it for, it was 90 seconds or a minute. Yeah. And then open it up, have a look at the positive, and then give me some feedback on it. And then put the neg in. We had little tanks of water, put the negs in there. Yeah. And then put a new Polaroid in, put the camera, cock the lens, put the camera back in the housing, and then pass it back to me. I put the weights around it and go back to the next shot. So we were averaging about a shot every hour.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's between amazing. Her doing the position and getting it right and having stingrays there, it took some time.
Yeah.
And our idea was to shoot one position a day, just in case. If we had a great shot, could we get a better one with that position?
Right.
Because we didn't know, right? Could there be a better magical moment happening? So we thought we'll concentrate on one position a day. And we had all these positions before we came to Tahiti.
Yeah.
And Tahiti, I have to say, because probably people are going to ask, we talk about this place before, and that the island before I was told was Niue with the whales.
Niue.
But Niue, N-I-U-E, and it's an island off the coast of Tonga.
Right.
But we were a little bit skeptical to go there because we never shot whales. It was in the open ocean and we've never been there. So we thought, why don't we go to Tahiti and test the housing and to making sure that it works in a lagoon. It's shallow. It's it's a lot easier to deal with than, and I flew a model from Hawaii that I shot before.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're in Tahiti testing the camera.
Yeah.
And so for a day, we were shooting one position and we had 3 weeks in Tahiti and we were shooting about 8 hours a day.
Which is about eight shots a day?
Averaging about 8 shots a day.
Wow.
But after 3 weeks, we were totally emotionally and physically exhausted. The water was not warm anymore. And she was kind of over it.
Yeah.
So it did drain it a little bit out of us, but we got some great shots. So I don't know. if your audience are seeing or will be seeing the Stingray photos, but that was a test shoot.
Yeah.
Which came actually probably more incredible than the shoot with the whales.
And so when you're doing that, did you know before you went to Tahiti how long it was going to take to do each shot?
No, we knew that we didn't know how long it would take to get, to take one shot and how long it would take to get the next shot,
Yeah. Yeah.
But we had a series of position and we said, okay, we got to do only one position a day, because if we think that we've got something right and then move on, then maybe later that could not be right. And I think that was probably the best thing, because the biggest problem, there was more problems than things as we were discovering it. So in Tahiti, I couldn't get sodium sulfite, and you can't travel with that.
Right.
In Hawaii, when I go there or some other place, I can go to the university or go to a chemist. You can't really get it over the chemist, but the university, with some credibility, they can trust you and give you sodium sulfite.
Okay. So what is sodium sulfite? What's it used for?
It's a chemical, and it can be used for different things, but you can't travel with it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Tahiti, with the PN55, you can wash the negative also in just water.
Right.
And the sodium sulfite help washing the chemicals of the neg, but also act as a hardener.
Right. That's
okay. Or as a fixer, sorry.
Yeah.
But it was recommended so that you could later on have your neg in the fixer after.
Right. They could do that.
So, yeah. So we put them in those little tanks that you get for 4.5s. And what we discovered on the first day when we came back, that probably 20%, between 15 and 20% of the negs was clear as a window, as a glass.
Oh,
the emulsion has flown back into the water.
Oh, God.
And we don't know why that was happening. There was two things. Because on the boat, we could have washed it and then tried to dry it. The biggest problem is that you're on a Zodiac, and around you is plenty of salt air.
Right.
And we thought that if we tried to dry it on the boat, we would end up having destroyed negative later on eaten by salt.
Right. Yeah.
So, you're on sea level. There's plenty of salt getting evaporated around you. It's bound to go on the neg.
Yeah.
So we decided to keep it wet and then dry it after a day when we come back home. And the first day we discovered that. So we didn't know if it was because the water got warmer, but it wasn't all the negs. And we didn't know if it was due to some of the net being the one done at the beginning and it passed a certain time. We were just hoping that the rest, whatever we were shooting could stay on the neg by the time we go home. We got home.
So and you're just talking about each day, right? Like not the end of the trip,
day.
Just every day. Yeah.
Every day. So
you've got eight negatives to in this container.
So about 2 negative would be out.
God. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could be unlucky. And I don't know what we've lost. I don't know because Ian was looking at it quickly. So, and that's why I said it was great that we were able to keep on doing the same position.
Yeah.
So that imagine if we moved on to the next position within a day, we could have just probably lost one of those positions.
Oh, no, totally.
So,
yeah.
So, and a lot of it was experimenting because some of the position wasn't working. So we moved on to the next. It's like shooting a model on land. Sometimes the idea that you have doesn't work and you just got to go with the flow and adjust it and move it or do something different.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And so this whole process is about as far away from digital photography as you can get.
Yeah.
This is like, did you enjoy that process of the slowness of it?
Yeah, I think I said to people the great thing it was, I think, I wouldn't say the problem of digital these days, but it's more like things are traveling at such a speed these days. Everything's changing rapidly. And it was kind of cool and great to be able to take your time to do things.
Yeah.
I mean, with digital, I mean, they're getting cameras now that everything, once you shoot it, it's going to go straight on the net or on the cloud or somewhere. So all this is about speed and time, and this was just slowing everything down to the core of things, the basic.
Yeah. There's digital cameras these days where it'll basically taking a video and then you just choose which frame you want to take out of that video.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you had to actually sit there underwater and think, oh, is this the shot or is the next one going to be the shot?
Yeah.
Before you even click the shutter.
I had a moment, I don't know if you can recall, there's a shot where she's in crouching and there's two stingrays on top of that.
Yeah.
All right. So those stingrays came from opposite direction. It's not like they were floating on top of each other and they just came on top of her. They came from left to right, both of them, and they came on top of her and turned towards me.
It's incredible.
So at what time do you go now?
Yeah.
Right? Because you only got one shot.
Yeah.
So it is it now? Is it now? Is it now? Is it now?
Yeah. Or was it then?
Am I going to get something better after or will I miss it?
Yeah.
So there was some of that happening,
And the beauty about that shot is that there is not just that the stingrays are in the perfect position, but there is a small fish in the foreground of that if it was, like half a centimeter more to the right, it would totally cover her face.
Yeah, I know.
Like
and we've got there's another shot where there's this other little fish and it seems like it's kissing her on the side of her face. It's kind of cute. Yeah. But it's a different, it's not there. It's slightly off her, but it feels like the fish is kissing her.
Yeah. And so when you're actually shooting, when you're using the camera, I mean, you've got no viewfinder, obviously. So you're just...
No, because it's a wide angle. We put a little viewfinder from a Nikonos on top of it.
Right. Yeah.
From a 15 mil Nikonos on it, because it's a glass viewfinder that's on top of it. So I could see, and in there it's kind of cool because it's got little frames. So I could see where the camera was pointing a little bit, and you get used to it. But it gave me a little bit of an idea.
And that's just sitting on top of the housing.
The housing, yeah.
In the water, yeah.
Yeah, it's a waterproof. You know what's a Nikonos, right?
Yeah, the old 35 mil underwater cameras.
Yeah, invented by Cousteau and Jacques Mayer.
Yeah. I think. So had you done any underwater photos in other ways before this?
Well, I come from Mauritius. So I was a big fan of Cousteau when I was a kid. So I was spending all my time in the water. Dad gave us a little Weathermatic Minolta. So they used to take 110 film cartridge.
Yeah.
So we started shooting with that camera and we just wanted to be Cousteau.
Right. Yeah.
Later on, we went to school, moved to Australia, and that kind of died because the great thing in Mauritius, you got a ton of coral and fish in front of you. In Australia, you just got sand.
Yeah.
So there was nothing much really to shoot here. So that kind of died down. And then I went and did uni. And then when I went to work about a couple of years later, I decided to go and buy an Iconos,
Right.
And when we went back to Mauritius, we did some photos. And then we thought, why don't we start shooting?
Yeah.
And so I've always been attracted to the water. I wanted to make a career in underwater photography, but in Australia, I think I would have had to move to Florida.
Oh, right.
Because in Australia, you had a couple of diving magazines at the time,
right.
But they wanted to pay $10 for a photo.
Right. Yeah.
So I knew that I could not make a living out of taking photos underwater and selling it to the mag. I had to either work for a company, a brand, an underwater brand, let's say like Gotcha, or any underwater,
Yeah, like a swimsuit brand or wetsuits or...
Well, yeah, a wetsuit company, a diving bottle company, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
And all of them are in Florida.
Right.
Or I would say the majority of them. So for us, it was, okay, well, what do we do? And then there was the surf happening that we loved also. So we thought, why don't we go and shoot surfing? So we transitioned from that into shooting surfing. And for 15 years, I was shooting surfing. I was traveling the world shooting surfing.
Mostly in the water or on the
mostly
beach
from
as well?
the land, because I had so many magazines I had to submit to, but I would go, in the water when I could.
Right. Yeah. And so when you're shooting like that, when you're shooting underwater with the Polaroid camera, I assume it's just natural light. How were you?
Yeah.
How were you metering? How were you exposing? Was it just?
Well, I know my light, and I know that I go under a meter underwater. I want to overexpose it at one stop.
Right.
So if I have f8 at 500 on top, I do 5.6 at 500 or f8 at 250 underwater.
And you would have to set all those settings before you close the case up, like.
Yeah. All that's done before.
Yeah. Did you have any leaks? Did you have any?
We didn't. We tested it in the pool before, and without the camera, of course. But he makes his housing. He does quite a lot of housing, so it's about making sure the O-rings well greased, and there was not much sand around us because other than the bottom of the ocean, but that doesn't tend to stick too much to your O-ring. But we were in the Zodiac, so it was quite safe. So. But every day we were making sure there wasn't a hair or something that could leak. But the O-ring was quite soft and big, so we were tightening that quite well. So
right, yeah. But do you still use the camera?
I still use a 4.5. I haven't used the housing since. I've got a photographer in Hawaii who wanted to bring it in the waves and test it out. I think you would have had to be a team of 2 or 3 people. So you would have the housing with a rope with 2 or 3 people. Because what happened is that if the wave takes it, it could smash it. So if the person is at the right point, because there's so much air in it, you have the 2 other swimmers at the back with a rope pulling on or holding the housing so it doesn't go with the wave.
Right.
That was the idea if you took that in the waves, but it hasn't been used since.
Right.
Which is unfortunate, but.
Yeah. I mean, because it's such a beautiful format. I mean, I haven't seen photos like this before shot underwater. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's incredible.
And for me, this was a great project. I mean, not just it was an incredible project. And I always try to go, okay, what's my next project?
Right.
What do? I don't need to keep on doing the same thing over. So what happened, unfortunately, with this project, with the whales, you probably go, where's the photo of the naked girl with the whales? When we went to Niue for 2 weeks, we didn't see one whale.
Oh, yeah, that's always the way.
And so we got some photos of the girl, and we thought, why doesn't she practice her position so that when we see a whale, it might stay, it might go, we don't know. So if she knows exactly how to be in her position, then we'll cut that problem and we can get straight in it quite quickly and take a photo quite quickly.
Right.
So we practiced and kept on shooting with a 4.5. For me, it was going also making sure I get more used to it in the open water.
Yeah.
And so we got some great shots also there, but nothing with a whale. And some person has told that to me before, said, oh, so are you going to go back and shoot it with the whales? And I'm going, I kind of maybe won't, but I'm kind of going, you know what? That was a project. That was what we've done. It's already an exhibition touring. If I go and do that again with the whales, for me, it's going to be, am I going to do a kind of same exhibition?
Yeah. Does that undermine what you've already done? Does it?
I wouldn't think it would undermine, but I think I would get bored of it.
Right.
To go back and say, oh, do I do the same position that I did? Because these were quite good position. Yeah, I'll do them, but then they'll become boring for me because it's doing the same thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I kind of moving on to a different project.
So did you move on to anything else underwater?
Yes, but I'm shooting a girl underwater, but I'm on top of the water.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So above, shooting down through the surface.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So trying to use the movement of the water to break the lines of a body.
Yeah.
And
as a filter, basically.
Not as a filter, but if you look at somebody from top of the water, if there's movement on the water, let's say a arm is not straight anymore. It's kind of broken.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to have that happening.
Right.
And then I also want to shoot it early morning to get all the colors of the sunrise or the sunset.
And so would this be in the ocean as well?
Pardon? Yeah. Well, the problem doing it in, let's say, a river, it tends to be a lot colder. I'm shooting it at the moment in the pools of Sydney.
Yep.
But I don't live in Sydney, so it's when I fly there, or it's got more complexity of elements. So, sometimes we go there and there's no sunrise. Sometimes there's waves, too many waves crashing in the pool. So there's things like this. And sometimes she can't perform at all. So
right.
I think I want to do it with different models to give it a little bit of different personality for some shots. So it's an idea. I've shot about probably 5 photos that I'm happy with, but I need another probably 10 or something, 10 or 15 to really be able to go, okay, which one I like best.
Yeah. And is this something shot on film, or is this a digital?
That's shot on, still on film on 5x7 Pentax.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And are you kind of drawn to projects that involve complexity?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
You like the problem solving?
Well, I think it doesn't need to be always problem solving as in technically, but I think I like it for it not to be easy. Okay, right. I think these days anybody can do anything, right? You can, recreate a photo if you want to. But it's for me, I remember when I was doing the 4 or 5 projects when we were trying to figure out how to make the camera go underwater. The owner of the shop, which I nearly slapped him for it because he's a purist, said to me, Eric, why don't you shoot this in digital and just slap a border around it?
That's sacrilege.
Yeah, exactly. I said, his name is Ron. He's unfortunately deceased and great man. He's come from Germany. And so he had all the thing with Leicas and Hasselblads and all that stuff.
Right.
But yes, it would have been the easiest choice. And I would have gone down and got 1,000 or 2,000 photos.
Yeah.
But anybody can do that as well.
Oh, no, exactly. Yeah.
You know,
and then where does it stop?
For me, it doesn't add to, I guess I like the challenge and I like to go and do something that nobody can repeat, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you know, it's that kind of, no one can kind of undermine what you did because it's all there. It's all captured in camera. It's all practically done. There's no cheating.
Yeah.
And that's my philosophy as well, is I do a lot of work. I build practical sets and I build, all the stuff under the water. Yeah. And when I post them, people are like, oh, you're really good at Photoshop. And I'm like, oh, God, no, that's not why. It's not how I did it. And that's not why I did it. And now with people, they'll see work and they'll see how I did it. They'll see the behind the scenes or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, you could have just done that with AI. And I'm like, oh, that's
that
not
problem again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just keeps happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's always, it's easy to take the easy route, I think. And,
yes.
So for me, it adds to the rarity of the photo after. It adds to a lot of things. I mean, those 4 or 5 photos are limited edition of 6 on the neg.
Right. Yeah.
So we wanted them to be quite special, and they printed 2 meters wide, which
wow.
I mean, if it is at 2 times, 6.
Times by 3. 6. So yeah, 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
Which must be amazing to see. Are they on display anywhere?
There's one in my lounge.
Right.
So there's been 3 buyers of them, but they're obviously at their house. But yeah, so they're for sale. And so people who buy them, I guess, put them. No company has bought them. I think some people are still quite careful about nudity, which is
right.
I think places like Europe, I haven't done an exhibition there with it.
Yeah.
And I will try to do something. It will be easier to have that in a foyer of a company, let's say in Europe, than anywhere else. I think you'll never be in a foyer in America, or it needs to be a few years here in Australia to get there.
Yeah. Eric, that's awesome. Such an interesting story, like how you did that and how you kind of, the time you spent doing that. So amazing. Yeah. Thanks for sharing it with everyone.
Easy. And if anybody got any question, I'm here to answer. They can email me and, that's no problem.
Yeah, great. I'll add that to the show notes when we publish it. And we also have a Facebook group if you want to join, where people come in and they actually ask questions of the guests we've had as well. So
cool. What's a Facebook group called?
It is just the Underwater Podcast group on Facebook. Yeah, I'll send you a link to it.
All right, great.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thanks very much, Eric. It's so great being able to chat with you about this.
Easy. I hope it all made sense. We were a little bit everywhere, all over. But hopefully we come back and it makes sense to people. But I think everybody out there that just try different things, experiment. It's really cool. Even if it doesn't work, who cares?
Oh, no, exactly. Yeah.
You won't know until you try.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. If you'd like to support with the production of these episodes, you can purchase our very cool merchandise at theunderwaterpodcast.com. We've got branded coffee mugs, stickers, beer cozies, and posters featuring our amazing illustration and logo by Joe Hodino. If you'd like to connect with us or learn more about our guests, you can reach us at theunderwaterpodcast.com or on Instagram. We also have a Facebook group where you can discuss the episodes and even get your questions answered by our guests. There's a link to it in the show notes. Also, don't forget about Waterproof magazine, showcasing the best in underwater art. Read it online or purchase a print edition at waterproofmag.org. You can learn more about my underwater photography workshops and mentoring at brettstanley.com or Brett S Photo on Instagram. The Underwater Podcast is presented and produced by me, Brett Stanley, and our music is Neo by Oh Boy. Keep creating, everyone. I'll see you in the water.